And a good Saturday morning to you, Roger Hill of Wuthering Heights. This weather video is driven by 802cars.com. They represent 802 Toyota, Twin City Subaru, and 802 Honda, all located off of exit 7 on Interstate 89. Warm air is moving in on a southwesterly flow, along with a main sort of axis, a plume of extra moisture. This is currently really sort of rotating north of us in our neck of the woods here. This is going to be sagging south as a frontal boundary that is going to be pushing in with severe weather you can see has been breaking out. And this area of low pressure that's pushing in this trough is going to change things up as a surface low. A cyclone will move across and pass just about right over Burlington. This will be taking place during the morning hours on Sunday. Preceding that, we'll have that frontal boundary that's going to be quasi-stationary with a considerable amount of sub-freezing cold air into the Champlain Valley along the northern tier regions. Probably the worst of the worst is going to be across the St. Lawrence Valley, a little bit into Montreal, certainly enough covering this particular area. And upstream, you can start to see just a little bit of freezing rain, a little bit of snow where the air mass, the colder air mass is thicker and snowflakes are reaching the ground. They're going through a warm layer, melting, probably producing sleet. And then we also have, of course, freezing rain. All of this will be setting up with this situation tonight. Let's take a look at many of the computer models. This is the current setup with the European model. This is valid about 10 o'clock this morning on Saturday. And what we can see is that things dry out just a little bit, and then a little bit more precipitation works in as we head toward the later part of the afternoon. And we have that rich moisture plume that's working across the region. This is valid about 4 o'clock this afternoon, and that's going to be at about 7 o'clock this evening. We're starting to see where the snow is setting up, a little bit of sleet, and also the batch of freezing rain where lower layers of the atmosphere are sub-freezing and cutting underneath in what we call an anafront. And you can start to see a little bit of that sub-freezing air make it and develop across parts of northern New York. But really by around 06Z, this is valid 1 o'clock. So this is 10 o'clock Saturday evening, 1 o'clock in the morning. You can see that it's affecting some of the higher terrain in the vicinity of J Peak. This is a little signature I've been noticing, mainly characterized by the European. We'll see how that works out. Meanwhile, we got sub-freezing air on a bit of a northeast wind that is relatively shallow. It's working across Lake Champlain. Colder to the eastern side of, across portions of eastern New York, to the west of the Champlain Valley. And then what you can see here, this is by around 5 in the morning. This is the main issue here, and I think it's between 5 and around 7 o'clock in the morning we have the maximum amount of freezing rain that penetrates a little bit up the Winooski River Valley. It looks like some parts of Orleans County, kind of stays out of Essex County based on this, but then we have this colder, shallow air, sub-freezing air, making it all the way down into western parts of Rutland County, stretching this zone out a little bit more. So carrying that a little bit further, this is, we're going to run that back again. So this is 7 o'clock in the morning. So this is precipitation that will be falling as freezing rain between 7 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock in the morning. You can see it's much lighter. The main batch of precipitation is now exiting. We have an area of low pressure that is tracking through the region. Also, we have some gusty surface winds with this frontal boundary that is producing this band of rain here. So going back to 7 o'clock in the morning, that's 4 in the morning, and then this is 7 a.m. on Sunday, and then that moves on through. And this is what I think is affecting the winds, but there's going to be a little bit of a gradient wind behind that. So as we run this, you can see the pressure gradients begin to pull away, and maybe tailing off with just a little bit of flurry action, then pulls away later in the evening after dark. And this is the HREF model, and showing the precipitation. We'll run it to around the current time. We'll take it up to around 10 o'clock. This is the depiction, again, of that moisture plume, of course. Green is all rain, moderate rain, getting into the slightly darker greens. And then where that cold, sub-freezing air is, this is, of course, freezing rain, and you can see the amounts, and we'll run the computer model. So this is by the afternoon. We're going into the evening now. Starting to see the first signs of what could be some elevated freezing rain. It looks like sort of south of Malone. And then continuing, you can see that it's mostly on the New York side of the border. with some sleet mixing into the north around the St. Albans area. This is about 02Z. So this is approximately 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10. We're starting to see freezing rain affect some parts of the northern tier regions. And then again, also kind of a mixed bag kind of deal. And this is, as it starts and moves in, that's 11 o'clock in the evening on Saturday, and finally midnight. It's really about midnight on that we see the more persistent freezing rain affecting the Champlain Valley. This is about 09Z, which is 4 in the morning. That's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and by 10 o'clock, it looks like the system is over based on the HREF model, High Resolution Ensemble Forecast. National Weather Service derivative for the event here, you can see that we're talking greater than 1/2 inch. Generally, it looks like around Franklin County into Grand Isle County. The second tier down, a quarter inch to 1/2 inch, and so forth in the yellow. And the main areas really being affected is 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch, and that maybe just a little bit in the international border area around Grand Isle County, and then over 1 inch. This is going to be the more devastating area. Unfortunate for areas about Malone and to the west into Messina land. Official National Weather Service zoomed in here, and these numbers look real good. There may be just a little bit of higher amounts in this northern area, unfortunately, for around the St. Albans, Franklin County State Airport, Highgate region, in this general area here. Switching to wind, what we have here is the European 06Z and the 0Z model. So what you can see is the comparison side by side. This is Saturday 21Z. That's 4 o'clock this evening. And then we have the winds calm down just a bit. And then a frontal boundary will be working in and setting up basically across parts of central Vermont. And we have this burst of wind. I think it's, again, related to some convection, a band of showers and some embedded thunderstorms potentially to make it into parts of southern Vermont. And you extrapolate this, you can see that the winds do hit the mountains here, the southern greens, and really do pick up. How far down the valleys they go, hard to say, but we are looking at indications again for some fairly strong brief gusts, and then that kind of pulls on out. I would ignore that last frame, and then you can see maybe a little bit of a gradient wind. There's a little bit of a flare-up again. This is valid about noon, about 11 o'clock in the morning, and that would be noon, 1, 2, 3. You can see a second flare-up. That would be 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4, 5, and it's pretty much finished at that point in time. At that point in time, we will have picked up perhaps maybe an inch of ice, probably somewhere between 1/2 inch and 3/4, covering a good portion of the northern Champlain Valley, about 1/4 to 1/2 inch vicinity of the central Champlain Valley, and more just a travel issue further off to the south, but a travel issue that definitely does get into western Rutland County and also bleeds up the Winooski River Valley, perhaps up the Lamoille Valley as well, and fills in some of these areas for a travel issue. That's it from here. Roger Hill, Wuthering Heights, a conference call at 9 o'clock this morning.